Hi, I'm Tulio Faria and welcome to FullDev. In this video, I'm going to show you why this piece of code is so tricky and why it's so important to us to understand this in JavaScript to be able to apply for some jobs and interviews for JavaScript positions. So why this is so important and why this is so tricky. So the first thing that I want to show you, what's the output of this piece of code. So let's try to execute this. No tricky. So one of the things that it's very nice to notice here, take a look. We have out here with the value 4, and inside in this console.log we have 4 and undefined for every value. So we are not able to get the value inside the vector or the array. Why this is happening? So the first thing, why we can access I outside of the for loop. The first thing that we need to understand here, when we use the word var to declare a new variable, we are creating the hoisting effect. So hoisting, it's the same when we did this, it's the same as we did with maybe do this. So just var I, and here we remove the declaration of the variable. So we can initialize it here, but it declares here, so at the top of the main function. So it's funny because when we use this, we have some side effects. So the first side effect is this. So we use the variable just in for loop, but it's valid outside. So it's the first effect of the hoisting. So we are going to trespassing the scope from here. So we're trespassing this little guy here. Another thing that is very common and usual in interview questions, it's why we don't get the proper value from I here. So since we are using setTimeout to call this function here, this small function here, so it's arrow function. So even if we are scheduling this to run after 0 milliseconds, the effect that we have here is we are putting this in event loop. So when we call setTimeout, we are moving this call here to event loop. So we are scheduling this to be called later. So, and when it is later, at least 0 milliseconds later. So when we do this, since the var I here is hoisting, so it fixes the scope for the global scope. Here we have this funny effect. So the value I is being increased every single iteration. So when we start this and when the event loop will call this, we already passed through this value. So it's already 4 here, and 4 is not a valid index for this array here. So that's why we got 4 and undefined. So how I can fix this? So the first thing, if we are using ES6, we can just change let from var for let. So probably we are going to have this problem here, so we need to comment this out. So let's do it again. Let me just clear here. Yeah, so here we can have a more reasonable output. So we got 0 and A, 1 and B, 2 and C, 3 and D, and that's right. So let has a different approach from var. So var we have a hoisting, and let we fix the scope for the for loop. So every single call of this iteration here, we have a different value for I. So that's really important. So that's why it's a good practice to use more let and const instead of var. so we can avoid hoisting and we can avoid a lot of side effects in our code. So we are going to increase our quality in the code. I prefer to use everywhere just const, and when I need to change to let, it's funny because since I use const a lot, when I change to let, I'm kind of aware of this change. So I pay attention to this change, so I keep my eyes on this, so I follow this code everywhere, because I know when we mutate the variable too much, it's possible to get some errors. So it's very important to start thinking about this. So this is the first thing that we can do for fix this. So what's the difference here? Var will create a hoisting effect, so will be available for here, and will not respect this scope here. When we put let, the variable will respect this scope here. If you want to keep var here, we can change to another possible solution here. So we can move here to function, to common anonymous function, and one of the things that we can do, we can use a self-invoked function. So I can put I here, so I'm invoking this function, and I would use a double I here. Let's use key. So let's change I for key. And another thing that we can do, if we try to use this code here, we are going to run this code just immediately, because we are just calling this. So we can do another thing here. We can return another arrow function and put the console log here. So we are locking key inside this scope here, so we can have the same effect here, so the same result here. So that's why we are fixing here the scope with key inside. Every iteration we create a new function, so we will create a new scope for this, so we can keep the variables in the value that we want. Since array is declared right up here, so array is valid inside this scope, so everything just works. So this is why this is so important. These questions, this kind of questions, tries to explore some concepts, so the difference between var, const, and let, and mainly the hoisting effect. So we kind of understand why this is happening outside, and to understand why we call out before the rest of the code, we need to understand when we call setTimeout, we're scheduling this function call to be called later. So that's why this is a very tricky question, and it's used so often to test the candidates. So if you like this video, please like the video below, comment, leave your comments, and subscribe to the channel to get notified when we publish new content here. So see you on the next video. Bye bye.